The first duty of government is to protect our rights.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government in what we were tasked to do.
In the Idaho Constitution, Article 1, Section 1, we have a right to life, we have a right to defend life.
This legislation is centered on meeting the needs of Idaho families.
And we have no way to maintain control over the spending of this program, and it will be a disaster for this state long term.
But we have a whole gamut of kids whose parents would like to do something for them and they cannot.
The courts have long held that our ability to transfer title on real property benefits society as a whole.
This is simply about putting it out of reach of young, innocent, vulnerable children and making our libraries and schools a safe place for them to go.
And I am increasingly frustrated that we cannot stop ourselves from drinking at the public trough.
He's sounding the alarm. He's saying if we don't address these issues, we potentially might have greater problems moving forward.
I feel like we're back to an unappointed board that gets to decide who is essential and who is non-essential.
If I was looking at a business and I was looking at these figures, there would be heads rolling because this is unsustainable.
We're supposed to be bottom-up government. We're supposed to be representing my citizens' ideas and your citizens' ideas, and we're supposed to be discussing them and debating them to come to a conclusion.
And for me, it's about a couple things. It's about food security, it's about national security, and it's about preserving American exceptionalism.
The First Amendment and our freedom of religion, freedom of speech are our first liberties. They are so important. We don't have the rest without them.
Well, hello! March 19, 2024. My name is Matt Edwards. Welcome to Idaho Signal. We are on the air. How are you folks out there? Our signal callers. I'm coining the term, our signal callers out there. You guys are doing fantastic. Getting a lot. I say a lot relative to what's going on, but folks are calling. Folks are calling the Capitol. They are trying to speak with their representatives and senators, leaving them messages on various bills that are before them, and that is fantastic. So keep it up. If you haven't done so yourself, you need to find out who your representatives, who your senator is. Find out what topics you're passionate about and the things that we've been focused on here, and get involved by contacting them. Because as debate continues, we can go take a live look now over at the House. It looks like they are on. Is this live right here? That's a different shot than I have. We might be a little. I might be a little behind, or you guys might be a little behind. But House Bill 716. Let's go full shot there. That's Representative Britt Raybould, and they are on House Bill 716, which is an appropriations bill for the judicial branch. They're going to be discussing the budget there, so we'll continue to monitor that. There are some bills that are coming up that we want to pay attention to. Over in the Senate this morning, they were doing some amending orders, and they had a bunch of bills in that they were going through amendments on, and they approved those amendments and have now moved forward and are currently in a heated debate right now on on Senate Bill. I'll get it right. We'll get it right today, guys. We'll get it right. Senate Bill. Let's bring this full screen. That's Senator Chris Trakel there. This is Senate Bill 1416, which, if I have this correct, would create a new fund and basically assign essential status to EMS responders and workers, much like the fire department and police department. I could have those details not quite right, but let's listen in here if we can.
Nice
Senator Chris Trakel.
Nest egg from the taxpayer.
So just consider there are other ways of doing this and funding this, and I think much better ways of funding this without having to move around departments, increasing any size, or any more costs to the public without actually seeing a reduction on their end when they utilize these services. Because remember, right now, the cost of an ambulance ride itself can be cost prohibitive to some people. And the joke has been made about, how much is it going to cost for me to take an ambulance ride to the hospital? I can't afford that, so I guess I'm going to have to drive myself. And that's really a sad state of affairs of where we're at. And I would like to see it to where we can provide this essential service, much like fire and police, to where it is free to the individual that needs to utilize it. I shouldn't say free, it's paid through taxes and fees. But we here on the government level take on that responsibility and make that a possibility for these individuals to have that service and ensure that it is there. Thank you.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President,
For what purpose do you rise, Senator?
to debate a second time.
Anyone wish to debate the bill for the first time? Senator Bierke, you're recognized to debate again.
It's not like me to want to beat a dead horse, but there were some questions that came up that I thought I might be able to answer. Someone asked what the difference is between police and fire and EMS as far as being an essential service. There really isn't much. I thought I talked about that a little bit of how they integrate, whether they're integrated into the service and the fire service or standalone. Yeah, it's an interesting concept in any way you look at it. There's a governance model to this. And then there's this other thing called medical control. And that's really what kind of makes it distinct between police and fire. Because in the fire aspect, you have operational control over your troops, whether they're paramedics working for your fire department or not. But when it's EMS, they get their marching orders also from what we call medical control, would be the state board that deals with that, the doctors and physicians that are on that deal with what they can do. But we're asking a question about funding, the structure. We're not saying that someone's going to be a state employee. Someone can still be a volunteer. Someone can still work for a municipality in the fire service as a paramedic, with that agency. They can work for Ada County paramedics or in EMS and be separate. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a state employee. It means that at some point the state's deciding, are we going to take responsibility for making sure that the citizens of Idaho have this ability to call 911 and expect similar results, no matter where you are in this state, rural, urban, suburban. We should all have the same expectations, and that's a big part of it. And what we're talking about here, someone asked again, it's interesting. We talk about police and fire, but I don't have the statistics here, but about 80% of emergency calls are EMS calls. And it'll always be that way. So whether it's a fire department that does their own EMS or it's a standalone EMS, when you start comparing the calls for service or an emergency, about 80% of those calls are handled by the folks of EMS.
Okay, this, like I mentioned, this debate has been going on for a while, and Senator Bierke here is standing up for a second time to debate. So I imagine they might go around the room for a bit. So we'll keep tabs on that and how that progresses. This kind of fits our theme today a little bit. We're going to have Brian Allman on to discuss the growing government and creating more funding and where that all leads to. So this is definitely an interesting day for this bill to be up. But what we wanted to do though this morning is this where we do we have this clip from this morning, guys? Where am I? I'm lost again here. We had I wanted to set up this morning, not the growing the government, because we're gonna have Brian on after that, but I wanted to set up this morning the Joe Alfieri questioning Senator McGrain. Or I'm sorry, Secretary McGrain. There was a lot of bills that flew through the committee this morning in the House State Affairs Committee, which is one of the few committees that is still meeting to go through bills. And if we have this clip available, on electioneering, we covered this. We watched some of this electioneering stuff happen in the Senate. This was a bill that was brought up to basically push back the 100 feet barrier around election voting polls and that sort of thing. And we watched some of that debate about a month or so ago. It's been a while, and this bill has been sitting in the House State Affairs Committee for some time. And so, not to go into to some of this debate, but Representative Joe Alfieri was not necessarily for this bill, which would, in essence, push the boundary back to 250 feet. It would create, I believe, a misdemeanor or some sort of penalty if you are caught electioneering within that barrier, similar to what we have now. But Secretary McGrain was before the committee this morning with that bill, and Representative Joe Alfieri had this to say.
Mr. Chairman, Secretary, good morning. It's good to see you again. So in the incident in Kootenai County, what was the result of that?
Secretary?
What was the final outcome on that?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Alfieri, law enforcement was called. I don't believe any citations or anything were issued. They were able to at least resolve it for the time being. Ultimately, the Kootenai County Elections Office designated that parking spot for staff as a way to mitigate that, but it doesn't address the problem at all polling locations.
Follow up? Yeah. What would prevent a similar incident from happening at 250 feet?
Secretary McGrain. Mr. Chairman, Representative Alfieri, not necessarily anything. If there's a parking lot large enough that were the case, it could. I think there's a difference in terms of 100 feet and 250 feet in terms of just trying to create a safer space. We have evaluated all of the other states in terms of what these restrictions are, and this fits more commonly in terms of the distance from the polling locations across the country.
Yeah, okay there. So 1244 really doesn't solve any problem. It just sort of moves the problem beyond the further boundary beyond the polls there. But what was interesting here, and maybe I should have set it up a little correctly though, is that what Representative Joe Alfieri was referring to was an incident that happened at the Kootenai County Election Office where there's a parking spot that is exactly 100 feet away, and if you get that spot, you're in a prime location to be able to disseminate information or do any electioneering activities. Any of this, our First Amendment right to disseminate information. And there was an incident during a recent election where two cars were vying for that spot, and there may have been a fender bender or not, whatever it was. But essentially nothing happened other than the election office taking care of the problem themselves and designating it a staff spot so that nobody could park in there. Anyway, these are all the little local things that pop up that then start having ramifications across the state. And we saw, I believe it was Senator Jeff Schroeder stand up during debate saying, look, if we could move this back 1,000 feet, I would do 1,000 feet. People, if you haven't decided who you're voting for on the day of the election or the morning of or whatever it is, if you haven't decided, well, it's too late, these rules, these imaginary rules that pop up that satisfy these people's interests is bananas to me. All that to say, I believe Joe Alfieri motioned to hold the bill in committee. That failed. So Senate Bill 1244 moves on to the House, and we'll definitely be following that because I think there's going to be some interesting debate happening on the House floor. This could have a lot of ramifications for a lot of grassroots groups who do take positions near polling locations to either just be friendly and hand out water and hot dogs. I think there was a story about people just celebrating the day of voting and rewarding people for their civic duty, to people handing out sample ballots or gathering signatures or whatever the case may be. And as far as I'm concerned, most of this activity happens without incident, if you will. And so it'll be interesting to continue this debate as that bill heads to the floor. Okay, we are going to take a quick first short break. When we come back, we have Brian Allman with us, and we want to get into an article that he released just yesterday, which I found fascinating from a sort of 50,000 foot view here. We want to kind of take a look at the state of Idaho. So we'll be right back.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government and what we were tasked to do.
There's a saying in Idaho, Esto Perpetua. It is forever. But the truth is, nothing lasts forever. Not without a fight. The Gem State is ours to fight for. It is ours to win. For life and liberty. For honesty and integrity. We ride together.
Okay, welcome back. So Brian Allman will join us here in a second, but he released an article. And if we could pull up that article here, I want you guys to go to Gem State Chronicle, The Specter of Socialism. And this was published, this was published yesterday. And if we scroll down here a bit, right here. Despite President Reagan's proclamation that government is not the solution to the problem, government is the problem, it's become very normal to look at government to solve the myriad issues in our society. People are hungry, pass a law. People are sick, pass a law. Inequality, pass a law. Even Republicans who campaign on a small government still look to government to solve these social issues. Most have fully accepted that Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, TANF, SNAP, WIC, and other entitlement programs are normal for a modern, civilized society. The problem is, folks, and here it is, the problem is that these programs only ever grow. It is nearly impossible to scale them back. That's it right there, exactly. The problem is these programs will only ever grow, and it is impossible to nearly scale them back. Quick side note, we saw yesterday a bill go through the House where somebody stood up and said, hey, something's happening here. We're actually killing a program that is no longer needed in Idaho. It was like $1 million fund program. They decided to nix it. Okay, woohoo, whoop-de-doo, right? I can't even remember what it was. But I wanted to bring Brian in here. Brian, welcome to the program. Great to see you. A fantastic article here because I think this kind of sets the stage for what we can expect a lot of these debates to be here, getting towards that we've had all session. But really, the crux of the issue here, when it comes to spending other people's money, our money, in just this constant growth of government. Can you walk us through here exactly what it was that sparked the impetus for you to write this article at this particular moment?
Well, thanks, Matt. It's good to be back. There's two ideas that I was having here, one at the ground level and one at the higher level. The ground level is this specific bill or specific budget appropriation, I guess you'd call it. And then at the higher level, it's this idea that even most Republicans seem to have just accepted the idea that we're going to use government to help people, and anything that helps people is a laudable use of government. But this specific bill is basically, so we know about the free and reduced school lunch program, where if you're below a certain income threshold, then your children in public schools get to have free school lunch or your reduced cost school lunch instead of paying whatever the going rate for school lunches is these days. It was only a couple of bucks when I was in school, but that was a long time ago, and inflation. So they've taken that program and then built upon it and built upon it and built upon it. And it's oftentimes at the federal level, but then the states will just go along with it. So during the lockdowns because many schools were closed, well, the people who run the program said, well, what about all these students who rely on free lunches at school to eat? Well, what are they going to eat? Well, we'd better give them money. And so they began essentially giving them EBT cards. They'd give their families EBT cards, just like you would if you were on food stamps or some of these other assistance programs, so that you could go, in theory, go buy food. Well, the lockdowns are over, right? And schools are open, right? But they've decided, well, we like this program, so we're going to continue it. And so they're going to start giving these cards out to families in the summertime so that their children can ostensibly eat during the summer. And what's really
now, wait, hold on, Brian. Hold on. Do we know whose idea this was? Is this coming from the Department of Health and Welfare? Are they the ones that said, hey, we've been, or was this a senator? I mean, not to put you on the spot, but the whole point of the question here is somebody somewhere said we give free lunches. And during COVID, we were sending them direct money so that they could buy their lunches when they're not in school. And now during summer break, we want to buy their lunches. Is that what you're telling me? That now that we're back, we still need to buy them lunches during the summer? Is this?
Yes, that's it. I can't tell you who specifically came up with the idea. It looks like it actually came out of the Biden administration. So someone at the federal level in one of these massive agencies where there's just uncounted offices and employees, somebody came up with this idea. And since Idaho is participating in this program, they're just going along with it. And it's run through the Department of Health and Welfare, which, as you know, is the biggest and most bloated, and if I may just share a personal opinion, probably most corrupt department in our state. You had the issues with Senator Zeiderveld digging into the way that they were appropriating millions of federal dollars in ways that the legislature explicitly told them not to, and they actively fought when attempts to investigate that. So they're moving a lot of money around, and they decided to go along with this plan to simply hand out EBT cards. And the weirdest thing about it is, coming down from the Biden administration, it's not just giving these cards to families who fall under that income threshold. It's giving these cards to families whose children go to schools where at least 25% of students are in the free and reduced lunch program. So even if you are really well off, you could be getting a EBT card in the mail if your child happens to go to school with other children who are less wealthy. It's really weird how they decided to do that.
So if the school has a certain threshold of the students that already receive this, then every student gets it during the summer?
Yep. According to my information, the Biden administration's regulations say that if merely 25% of students attending a public school will qualify for reduced or free lunches, then all students receive them.
Wow. Okay. All right. Continue.
So you can see what happens here. They say, well, there's an emergency. We need to take care of people. Oh, the emergency is gone, but now people are reliant on this, so we need to continue taking care of them. It would be cruel to pull it back now. And that's how government grows. It's always, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. There's always good reasons for this program. I was just listening to the debate on the Senate about the emergency medical services, consolidating it at the state level. And all the arguments for it were emotional arguments. We need to take care of people. We need to support our first responders. And that's always how these things go. There's a good emotional reason to expand government and increase taxes and do more redistribution of wealth, because there are some people who need help, so we need to help them. And that's what I'm saying. Even now, most Republicans have adopted this mindset that we can and should use government to help people. And then once people become reliant on it, then you can't get rid of it. As I said in my article, they tried to put some sideboards on the Medicaid expansion program, just some thresholds it had to meet in order to continue operating, to make sure that it was actually being used for what the people say it was supposed to be used for. And you had hundreds of people sign up to testify saying, no, you can't do that because I rely on this. I will die. And
we had Representative Jordan Redmond was presented a Medicaid reform bill back in January that I thought had some legs. I thought it would go through. Yeah, here he is right there. And as you said, people after people just stood up there to oppose any sort of, and he wasn't removing Medicaid. He was saying, if you are able-bodied, right? I mean, your article lays this out, that the Medicaid expansion came into our state with federal dollars, and it was promised, quote unquote, promised, that it would only help the folks that really, really needed it. And then it expanded and expanded to include people that are just as able-bodied as you and I are, to be able to qualify for this stuff without any proof or any impetus to go find a job and pay your own way. I don't understand what's going on in our country, in our state. This is Idaho.
I was thinking of a phrase this morning that you don't see very often anymore, and that's moral hazard. The idea that if the government does something to entice you to, some sort of vice or some sort of moral failing, and that's what these programs really are. Because sure, some people need help. Some people, some people need a safety net. In the past, that safety net was churches and family and communities. Now the government is just taking over each one of those things, and when the government does it, people come to not only rely on these programs, but they come to feel entitled to them. And it takes away, there used to be a sense of shame for needing help or for being on some sort of public assistance. It was a worst case scenario. This is just until I get back on my feet, and then I'll, repay what I've taken from society. Now it's more like, yeah, well, I'm a taxpayer, or, well, not necessarily, I'm a net tax receiver in this case, in this hypothetical case. I'm a citizen, I'm a human being, therefore I deserve this. I deserve the labor of other people to support me. And it's really, it's inverted. It's completely inverted what our, civic spirit once was. And the more these programs are created, the more they expand, and they always expand because, you see that, okay, we're helping some people, well, we need to help others too. And then those people who are ostensibly being helped, they come to rely on it. And so they demand more and more and more. And then, like we're saying, you can never get rid of them.
Yeah. I had mentioned to you earlier, but before we were prepping for the show, if you were familiar with Davy Crockett. We all know Davy Crockett and his legendary baseness, but he was a congressman. Davy Crockett was, and he stirred the pot a little bit on this issue when I believe he stood up and debated against a congressional legislation or an act where they were going to give $10,000 or $20,000 to a military widow, and he stood up and said, "This isn't our money to give, and if we really wanted to help her, why not forget about sending taxpayer money? Why don't we all donate a week's worth of our pay?" And she would end up with a lot more money. And there was a lot of pushback on this, but I encourage people to go read Davy Crockett's "Not Yours to Give." There it is, 1867. He wrote this, and this was an account that was written down and shared widely. I think this is at fee.org. Is that the name of the website? It's the Foundation for Economic Education has this article on this. So I encourage that. But are you familiar with the Davy Crockett speech at all?
Somewhat familiar. I've skimmed it, and I've heard various other legislators have been bringing it up a little bit this year. It is a good reminder. I just want to point out the article, the excerpt that you write there was 1867. Crockett lived much earlier. So this is 200 years ago. You had people standing up and pushing back against the idea of being generous with other people's money. And I think the closest analog today, or maybe recently, would be Ron Paul when he was a congressman from Texas. He would say the same things. He would push back against even things like this, giving a honorarium to a widow of a soldier. Yeah, it sounds nice, but you know what? They always make these things sound nice. There's always a good reason to spend other people's money, but the reason not to is because it's not your money. And we've seen a few legislators here in Idaho push back on that too recently. Representative Dale Hawkins, I believe, was referencing this speech a few days ago. He was saying it's not ours to give.
Right.
And these people have become so comfortable with giving away other people's money, and they've forgotten that it's other people's money. They adopt this mindset, I think, whether consciously or subconsciously, that all the taxpayer dollars, it's just theirs to allocate as they wish, and they pat themselves on the back for their generosity.
Yeah.
I included in my article a clip of Margaret Thatcher, the former Prime Minister of Great Britain, who fought against this idea, saying that the problem with socialism, and she calls it socialism, is that you eventually run out of other people's money. But even at a baser level, the idea that you can just take someone's money and give it away for a good cause is it really is theft at a certain level, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
If
I find fine point on it.
If I come to you on the street and rob you at gunpoint and take all your money, and then drop off that money that I just stole at a homeless shelter or some other charity, that doesn't get me off the hook for stealing it.
No, exactly.
Taxes are necessary at a certain level. We need roads and bridges and whatnot, policemen. But when it comes to just going out of your way to be generous and take care of people and transfer that wealth to those who need it, that's not charity. That's theft.
Yeah. Brian, can I hold you over one break here?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, great. Because I want to get into the specifics of this article. I want to wrap up what the attempt was to get rid of this EBT idea, this summer lunch program. So I definitely want to dive into that a little bit more and see where that is now. So we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back with Brian Ullman.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government and what we were tasked to do.
The dictionary defines a pledge as something that you give as a sign that you'll keep a promise. As Idahoans, that's what we're looking for in our elected leaders. A sign that they'll keep their word. Talk is cheap, and so are political promises, hidden agendas, and special interests. This is why we created the Citizens Alliance of Idaho Pledge, affirming the values Idahoans have been living by for over 100 years, inspired by the only two documents everyone has agreed to live by. So when an Idaho legislator signs our pledge, inviting voters to publicly hold them accountable, that's what we call political integrity. The pledge restores trust and honesty between voters and their legislators. It means protecting our shared values and ensuring your voice is heard in Boise. And that is priceless. Thank your legislator for having the political courage to sign the Citizens Alliance of Idaho Pledge. And if they haven't, it's time to ask why.
Okay, welcome back. The Signal is on the air. For all you Signal callers out there, over in the Senate, they're debating Senate Bill 1421 dealing with liquor license. Just wanted to keep you abreast of that, changing some of the liquor license. It's a mess. The liquor license program in Idaho is a mess. So they're trying to fix it or make it easier for one person and harder for the next. Who knows what they're doing over there? Over in the House, they're debating House Bill 585 dealing with digital assets, digital currency. And so that's what's going on there. But we are here with Brian Ullman, and we are discussing his article, The Specter of Socialism, that is he published yesterday on the Gem State Chronicle. And so we were discussing one of the main impetus for you diving into this topic at this time, although there could be many options to choose from to get into this topic. But the one thing is that JFAC had a debate in the committee just a few days ago, I think, where they were discussing the Department of Health and Welfare budget, and the department wanted to add in an extra $1 million to hand out EBT cards to families who get lunches paid for their students while they're in school, to be able to buy lunch and essentially anything. I mean, these cards are, I see, we take EBT signs, at places all over the place. So essentially these cards could be used for anything. We're just giving money away. And there was a vote in JFAC on this issue. Can you explain how the votes and how the substitute motions go and what to pay attention to in JFAC, Brian, when these things come up? So
I haven't focused on JFAC as much because numbers are big and scary, but it is very important what happens there. What will happen is that each member of JFAC, the Joint Finance Appropriations Committee, it's a joint committee of the House and the Senate. I think it's the House Appropriations and Senate Finance Committee. I'm pretty sure that's how it goes. Anyway, they meet jointly, they vote jointly, they debate jointly. And it's a very powerful committee because they set all the budgets, all $14-15 billion that the state appropriates. And that includes state and federal money, because we get a lot of money from the federal government. Almost half our budget last year was from the federal government. So, and each member will work on a budget. They'll work with a sub-agency, say, of the Department of Health and Welfare on one of their budgets. It's not the entire department. It's, a little section, and this one is the one dealing with, Division of Welfare, for example. And so that member will work on that budget with the agency. Okay, you're asking for this much. We're willing to give you this much. Let's negotiate. And then they come into the JFAC meeting, which starts at 8 a.m. usually, and they move to adopt the budget. So they basically move to take this much money from our general fund and put it here, this much and put it here, this much and put it here. And that's the original motion. Usually what happens, though, is someone else will come in and they've also been working on the same budget. And they have maybe a different view of things. And they'll come in and make a substitute motion. And they'll say, no, let's move only this much money here. And let's move zero here because we don't want to fund this program, say, sex ed for kindergartners or something. And so they'll come in with something different. And then the committee will vote on the substitute motion first. And if it passes, they're done. That's the budget they send to the House and Senate floors. If it fails, then they go to the original motion and vote on that. So what had happened is the original motion, and I've got the screenshot here so I can get it right here. Representative Rod Furness moved to do this motion that included the $1 million appropriated to the Department of Health and Welfare to run this summer EBT program. And it's $1 million from Idaho taxpayers, but it's actually $17 million was the total expected cost, because a lot of it's federal money. And you might say, well, it's free money, right? Well, no, it's still coming from our country. It's still coming from our taxpayers, whether through direct taxation or
wait. So it was $1 million from the Idaho General Fund, but this program would have taken $17 million from
Correct.
the federal. Oh, so this is a ton of money.
Yes.
This is a ton of money. Okay, we're talking 18. Is that 18 million? Right?
My information says the total expected cost would have been $17.5 million. So that might have included the $1 million of Idaho money that was appropriated.
Okay, so $17.5 million to send EBT cards home for the summer for kids to eat. Okay, gotcha. Continue. Furness and Rod Furness is the guy who motioned for this, so we know he's on board with. Hey, yeah, I'm all for this. Go ahead.
Yep. So Representative Furness made the initial motion, seconded by Senator Cook. There's always a motion and a second in this committee, and that was for a total budget of $253 million appropriated between state and federal money to this division of welfare. Representative Josh Tanner, who I'm proud to say is my representative out here in Eagle, he made a substitute motion that was only $105 million, basically slashing almost $150 million from this budget. And one of the things that he would have cut would have been this summer EBT program, because it's not like the legislature ever got together and said, it's going to be the law in Idaho that we provide EBT cards to families during the summer. No, it's that years ago, Idaho enrolled in this federal program, and now the federal government's changing the program and adding more stuff to it, and the Department of Health and Welfare saying, yep, sounds good to us, we'll go right along with that. So it's bypassing our legislature, and then now they're asking for money to fund this program that the legislature never actually debated. So anyway, Representative Tanner made the motion, and Senator Herndon seconded it for a much smaller appropriation, including just getting rid of that summer EBT program, saying we're not going to pay for this, which therefore that would mean you're not going to take part in it. We're not going to do it. Unfortunately, that substitute motion failed. The yes votes were Representatives Tanner and Lambert, Senators Herndon, Ben Adams, Carl Bierke, and the chairman of JFAC, co-chair, Senator Scott Grow, who is also my senator.
So just to be clear, this motion, which you said failed, but it did have support from Representative Josh Tanner, Senator Scott Herndon, Representative Tina Lambert, Senator Ben Adams, Senator Carl Bierke, and Senator and Chairman of JFAC, co-chair of JFAC, Senator Grow. they all voted yes in getting rid of that EBT program, as well as $100 or so million of other stuff. So
Correct.
that
They voted for the substitute budget that was only $105 million instead of $253 million.
Okay. All right. So let's take a break here. All right. You got this, folks? Are you paying attention? This is what they were trying to do, which is cut the spending. These other folks, Furness and Cook so far, were the ones proposing that we increase this. However, if all these people had to do, if they really wanted to cut government, if they really wanted to cut the program, is they would have voted with Tanner, Herndon, Lambert, Adams, Bierke, and Grow. So who didn't vote to cut? Do you have that list, Brian?
Yeah, I actually just shared something, so your producer can put it up there. This is
beautiful.
This is what you see if you're in the JFAC room or if you're watching it on the stream in the morning. This is the, it's actually really cool. I wish all the committees would do this. Oh, dang.
Yeah, you see all the money right there. I mean, I kind of know what I've seen this before, so I kind of know what I'm looking at. If people's eyes are glazing over, that's totally fine. So let's read off the names of the people who did not vote to cut this spending. Who were the people that did not vote?
You look over on the far right column here is the substitute motion. And they can actually make an amended substitute motion. And in a committee, you can make 3 motions. But they just did 2 this time. And so your ayes were Grow, Bierke, Adams, Herndon, Lambert, Tanner, which means the nays was everyone else on JFAC, who is Senator Van Burtenshaw, Senator Dave Lent, Kevin Cook, Julie Van Orden, Janie Ward Ingleking, Rick Just. And then on the House side, you had Wendy Horman, the other co-chair of JFAC, voted against the substitute motion. Steve Miller, Matt Bundy, Britt Raybould, Rod Furness, James Petsky from Ada County, Clay Handy, and Brooke Green. And only 3 of those people are Democrats. The rest are all Republicans who are voting against cutting the size and scope of government.
Which is exactly what we see that's exactly what we know of Democrats. Like, they want to grow government. They want to spend money. They just want to take everybody's money and give it away, and keep people dependent on government. So the people that were voting with those 3 Democrats on JFAC were the people, again, Senator Van Burtenshaw, Senator David Lent, Senator Kevin Cook, Van Orden, right? Mm-hmm. Ward Ingleking and Just, who are the 2 Democrats. And then on the House side, even the co-chair, Wendy Horman, who we've been singing praises for her efforts, on working with Grow and getting this process, this new budget reform process for moving forward, so that they could cut spending like this, and she votes against it? Are you kidding me? Come on.
It's disappointing. And
it's very disappointing, because we were out there sticking our necks out there. People are voting for this stuff, and then we give them the ability to do it. We vote people in, like Senator Scott Herndon's a freshman, Tina Lambert a freshman, Josh Tanner a freshman, Ben Adams is a freshman senator. He was in the House last time. And Scott Grow, who's been there saying, I want to cut government, help me get to a leadership position so I can help cut spending. Well, he put his ass on the line, pardon my French, right? And he did it. He voted for it. So good for you, Senator Grow. Man, I don't know, Brian.
What's interesting is if you look at the people who switched their votes. So Grow, Bierke, and Adams on the Senate side, they all voted for the substitute motion. They would have been happy to grow government or to stop the growth of government, to shrink government. But then once the original motion came up, they were also fine voting for it. You see, they voted for the original motion. So I think there's a lot of people like that. So you have the Democrats. They will always vote to grow government because they think government's a great thing. We should all take care of each other, even if it means forced charity at the point of a gun. We'll make everybody equal or else. So we know where they stand. And then you have the conservatives that want to shrink government, your Tanners and Herndons, Lamberts. And then you have 2 more groups in the middle. You have the folks who are Republican, but they really want to grow government. They think, we can use the levers of power to move money around and help people out. Those are your Furnaces and your Cooks. They're always going to vote to grow this too, which is frustrating. It's, they agree with the Democrats basically. But then you have some people in the middle. You have, Senator Adams, Senator Bierke, even Senator Grow. They'll shrink government if they can, but if they can't, well, oh well, we'll just keep growing it. And it's frustrating, but it tells me we need more people like Tanner and Herndon and Lambert in there who are willing to lead on this issue. Because if we have some strong leaders in there and we have a critical mass of legislators who will shrink government, who will cut spending, then I think there are others who will follow along. Because right now they're following the wrong way.
They're following the wrong way. They go out there and they campaign and they pitch themselves as being fiscally conservative and all this garbage, and they're liars, you know. I mean, sure, they voted for the motion that would have cut government, and then some of them, when the other motion came up to just approve it, they voted aye. They should have voted nay. You know, they should say, no, I'm not going to vote this way either. But they feel like, okay, well, I guess this is the way the committee wants to go, so I'm going to vote. I'm going to vote to approve the budget because we need a budget. You know, look at that. It's unbelievable. Okay, so all right, so this is this is a bill. This is a bill now that's going to be debated and all that stuff. So it's not over yet. We get to call people out. But where is this bill headed? Do we know where it's going? Is it going to the House first, the Senate first? Do we know?
I'm not sure of that. It's still, as far as I understand, it's still being printed. It does not have a number yet. Once it has a number, it will be, it will end up being on the. No, there we are. It'll end up having a bill number, and it will go to either the House or Senate floor, and then the other side. So it still has to pass both of them.
Right. Now, this is just an example. I mean, this kind of thing happens all the time with these budgets, and so I'm not necessarily saying this is the budget that we all need to kill, right? But this is an example, and you highlighted it in your article, and I thank you for doing so because you know all these numbers and everything they can just gloss over people, and we can kind of get lost in the weeds and get caught up with all sorts of other issues that are going on. But this is really the crux of the problem here. If we want to stop a corrupt agency, which I believe that the Department of Health and Welfare is corrupt. I mean, they were running that needle exchange program where they were handing out drugs and other drug paraphernalia. I mean, it's a they sponsor all the drag shows in front of kids and all that sort of thing. I mean, and Representative Monks presents a bill that says, you know what, let's not have the government sponsor any public events. You know, from drag shows to rodeos. Like the government doesn't need to be sponsoring these events. You know, and they can't get that bill passed. Brian, I'm fired up, man. You got me fired up because this is socialism, and this is what's happening, and it's happening right under our noses here in Idaho.
It really is, and that's why I titled my piece "The Specter of Socialism." You know, Karl Marx said the specter of communism was haunting Europe. Well, I think we have a specter of socialism here. People will say, "Oh, it's not really socialism because the government's not nationalizing industries, and we're not seizing the means of production or whatever that would mean today." But it is taking money from those who produce and giving it to those who don't, and it's just more and more and more and more and more, and it's eventually going to run out of other people's money, but also it's going to incentivize people to stop working as much, to stop innovating, to stop making money because the government's just going to take it anyway. Why would you go to work when you can just not? Why would you go to work to feed your family when the government's going to mail you an EBT card so you can buy food for your family? That's why I said it's a moral hazard because it's incentivizing not working. It's incentivizing being dependent on the government, on other people to survive. And it's, our country used to incentivize hard work, and now it really doesn't.
You're right, Brian. You're right. And, we're going to do something for the first time here. Sometimes people leave live comments while we're streaming, and I'm going to click show on this comment and see how this thing works. So here's a comment. Well, from the Citizens for Government Accountability. I'm not quite sure who those folks are, but they've got a good comment here. It says, well, if they can give EBT cards during the summer, why not do it year round? And then the schools can just get rid of all of the lunch programs and just let all the food prep people go. I mean, why not, right? There's a good way to save some money.
Well, that's the logical end of all these programs. If you just take it one step further, eventually you just have government paying for everything.
That's right. All right, Brian, thank you for coming on. Where can people follow you and more importantly, read and share this article?
Well, gemstatechronicle.com. It's still the top article because I haven't written one today. That's the Substack side of it. If you go to gemstate.substack.com, you can read the article and also subscribe to get them every day in your email or to support my work. Follow me at Twitter at gemstatebrian, and I'm keeping up on what's going on in the Capitol these days. I'm also working on the Gem State Chronicle. Speaking of being fired up, well, now's the time to direct that fire because it is election season. And I'm working on something on the Chronicle called the Primary Pulse, where I'm going to have a profile of every single legislator. So you can just click on them, see their social media, see who's endorsing them, see what if they're an incumbent, see what their freedom index is, see what their ACI score is, so you can compare and, make a good decision about who's going to represent us for the next 2 years. Maybe we'll get some more people who will, like Representatives Tanner and Senator Herndon and Tina Lambert, who will actually try and shrink the size and scope of government rather than just saying it.
Amen. Amen, brother. All right, Brian, thanks for joining us. We'll check back with you, especially when you get those legislator or candidates, whatever you had mentioned, those profiles up, so we can go through that too. That'd be very fascinating. Got to keep people engaged on this. Thanks again, Brian. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, folks, we'll take a short, quick break. We'll get you up to speed on some more things that happened this morning, and we'll be right back.
Which is not a surplus, it's an overcharging of the taxpayers.
All Idaho lawmakers swear an oath to support the Idaho and U.S. constitutions. But how's that working out for you? Because not all Idaho lawmakers share the same values. That's where the Citizens Alliance of Idaho Pledge comes in. 10 statements inspired by those 2 founding documents that are designed to preserve our shared values. Values such as education freedom, safeguarding free speech, defending our protected right to self-defense, and being responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars. When a lawmaker signs the pledge, they are performing an act of political courage, accepting the challenge to be a champion for our values, and serving with political integrity. To find out if your lawmaker signed the pledge, visit idahopledge.com. Paid for by Citizens Alliance of Idaho. We ride together.
All right, folks, I'm fired up because this is exactly why, and that ad we just played right there is exactly this is the type of nonsense. What we just went over with Brian is a type of nonsense of why I get so fired up about this stuff, because our organization is committed. We are committed to holding people accountable to what they say. And I have spent the last 3 years trying to talk to legislators, talk to candidates, talk to people about our Citizens Alliance of Idaho Pledge. And one of the things that is on the Citizens Alliance of Idaho Pledge, and it's in this book here, I'm going to read it to you, is I will not vote for any budget or spending bill that expands government. And we've had folks say, I can't sign your pledge. I can't sign your pledge. But yet they walk around saying that they're fiscally responsible. And now we know why they won't sign the pledge, because they vote for stupid stuff like this. Now, I get it. Nobody can be perfect. And no budget is going to never expand a little bit because of inflation, rising cost of goods, and getting rid of one program and adding another so that it's an overall reduction. There's many different variables in this, right? But the spirit of saying I don't want to expand government is laid out directly in what we just looked at. We are going to give money away so that kids, when they're not in school, can go eat. Why don't they go get a job? I mean, some of these kids are old enough to go get a job. So go get a job, right? And I know that doesn't solve everything. These kids are starving and all these heartbreaking things, but there's the incentive. You need to provide for your children. You need to work hard. Some people work 3-4 jobs over the course of a year just to be able to put money on the food on the table for their children, for their family. And others just go, just send them to school. They'll feed them there. Oh, look, now I got an EBT card, and now I can do this. Now I can do that. We used to have mutual aid societies. we talked about charities. We talked about all sorts of things. I'm not going to be made to feel callous that I'm some sort of person who doesn't care. But government is not the solution. It's not the only solution. If you really care, this is your issue, then raise money. Raise money. I got off track here. I know we have a bunch of clips lined up that we wanted to share about what happened in these committees this morning. But I think it's really important to hold these people accountable. You hold these people accountable. And again, I don't want to necessarily harp on this particular bill, that particular budget, but that is just a perfect example. It's a perfect example of a violation of their constitutions, where we're just stealing money. We're just taking all of this money and just giving it away to people who don't want to work, to people who don't want to get the ability to help themselves. Are there going to be hard cases? Yes, and let's deal with that. But this idea that we're going to do what the Biden administration did, that says, well, if 25% of the school gets free lunches or some sort of discounted lunch, then everybody gets these summer cards to go eat. Folks, get rid of these people. Get rid of them. If they're not fighting for you, get rid of them. I'm done. We're done with this. You got to get rid of them. You got to get rid of them. They are not our friends. They are not our friends. And if they're telling you, oh, well, I'm working hard to move this way, and if I could just get a little bit of this, we could do this. How many times have we heard that at the national level? Oh, just if we just had the White House and the Senate and the Congress, then we could do something good. Well, how many times has that happened? And the thing that you're hoping happens doesn't happen. Right? Remember when Trump came in and we had the White House, the Senate, and the House of Representatives, and they were going to get rid of Obamacare, and then a couple people like John McCain and Paul Ryan or whoever they were like, I don't know if we really want to do that now. Get rid of them. Get rid of them. Vote them out. Vote them out. Vote them out. And I know what you're saying. Some of you, we tried to vote them out, and they stole the election, and they rigged it, and they fooled people, and they misled people. Well, that's why we're here, folks. That's why we're here. We are trying to get at the truth. We are sending out a signal to cut through all that noise. So continue to show up to vote. If this is the field that they're letting us play in, then we have to play in it. We have to play in it for as long as we can. For as long as we can. Okay. I want to segue into one of these clips. I'm going to try and use this rant to segue into one of these clips here. And maybe it is with, petitions. So this morning, Senator Doug Okonowitz presented a bill that would call for those who are gathering signatures for a petition, people who are paid to gather signatures for a petition, that they would have to disclose that they're being paid to gather signatures for a petition. And so, and this was in the House State Affairs. Representative Crane had a question. Chairman Crane had a question for one of the public testimony people because she was pushing back on this notion that they had to do this. So let's watch that exchange if we've got it.
My name is Mary Ruck, and I am representing myself. I seem to see these all the time. I mean, there's so many bills that have come up that are aimed at the initiative process. I'm wondering who's going to enforce this? Has there been a problem that the sponsor is responding to, that this bill is trying to address? I guess I'm not hearing about the problem. Just curious. And if there really isn't a problem, why legislate against something that isn't there? Thank you.
Are there questions for Mary? Mary, I do have a question for you. So with regards to paid signature gatherers, do you really feel like that's a grassroots citizens initiative if people are being paid to go out and gather signatures and getting paid per signature?
Yeah. Because the question of whether I get somebody to sign my petition, it's a question that we're trying to ask the electorate, people who are registered to vote. And if I am not able, as a volunteer, to take the time to go somewhere, wherever, and I can hire somebody to go out and inform people about what is being asked, give them information, what's the harm? I'm still, as a person, if I'm the one being presented with the information, I can still say yes or no if I'm feeling informed.
Okay. I have a different opinion on that. I think the financial incentive changes the game from being a citizen-driven to it's a business model now. And so you and I can agree to disagree, and that's fine.
But the vast majority of people who are gathering these signatures are me. People like me and my husband and other people back here. I don't know, maybe Sam knows the percentage of paid signature gatherers. It's not this giant problem that legislating against it, and yeah, there would be a fiscal note on this. Who is going to enforce it?
Okay.
All right.
Representative.
Very good. You know, it's fascinating there, if you want to dive into her reasoning, that we should just, you know, the point is that she was against the idea that people should disclose that they were being paid. You know, it's just transparency, right? So and to make the equation here, it sounded like she was just advocating for unrestricted funding of campaign activity without disclaimer, right? Meaning, like, if I'm a billionaire, I can just give a ton of money to someone to just go off and advocate for an issue or a campaign without nobody knowing where I'm coming from, what money was behind it. So she's literally advocating for dark money to do this, because if she's all this bill does is simply give transparency to who is paying for. You know, if Mary is paying somebody to go out and gather signatures because she doesn't want to go out there, and someone comes to my door and I say, well, who paid you? And they're like, well, I don't have to tell you who paid me to do this. And I go, did Mary put you up to this? Because I know Mary, and me and her disagree on a lot. And if she's behind this, I'm not sure if I agree with this. And I know you're telling me that it's going to do this and it's going to do that. But if Mary's behind it, I want to do a little more research, right? Or maybe you love Mary and you're like, is Mary putting you up to this? Because you're telling me something and it sounds a little bit extreme, like it's this. But if it's Mary behind this, then you know what? I trust Mary. And so I think I will sign that. So it cuts both ways. It's called transparency. It's called truth. It's being truthful. What is the harm in being truthful, right? We know it harms deceivers because deceivers want to deceive. And there's a particular ideology out there that is hell-bent on deceiving everybody in order to gain more power. And we are not going to have it. We're not going to have it. I'm done with it. All right, folks. Man, you know, we try to keep this show to an hour, but jam-packed today. The Senate adjourned. The House is debating House Bill 704. And if it's interesting, if House Bill 704 is interesting, then I want you guys to see it. So I'm going to look up what House Bill 704, it was amended. Dale Hawkins, the man. Can we put up that shot of the House? Do you guys have the shot of the House? What is it? What is 704? Anybody have it? I got so many papers here. I have no idea where we're at. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Dale Hawkins is done anyway, so I like listening to Dale. I'm sure you guys do too. Okay, folks. let's kill it. This is done. Thanks for tuning in today. We will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow will be Wednesday, but we will be back tomorrow. I highly encourage you to just pay attention to who is spending your money, how they're spending your money, and what you can do about it. Filing day was on Friday. The chessboard has been set. The candidates are out there. And we are going to focus on who the people are that are doing you dirty and who the people are that are doing you good, and I'll chop up the English language in order to make that point. I want to leave you today with, yes, please, IdahoSignal.com is where you can support our efforts, send us a message, keep us on target, make sure that we're doing what you guys feel is important. I don't want to get off message here. I don't want to get off target. I want to stay right on the signal. And I need all you signal callers out there to keep us honest as well as keeping them honest. So yeah, head over to IdahoSignal.com. I do want to leave you with one clip. Do we still have Brian Lenny's video? I want to leave you with this. And if I get a thumbs up, then I'll segue into it. But I think we had this ready. Do we have that, guys? Can you? Otherwise, I'll just end it. If we don't have it, I'll end it. But you can tell me no, and we'll end it, and we'll save it for tomorrow. No, okay, good. We will have it tomorrow at the top of the hour. What a way to make you guys come back. We'll have it for you tomorrow at the top of the hour, or the top of the show, rather. But thanks again for joining us. We will be back tomorrow. And yeah, keep calling out there, folks. Keep it calling. All right, take care.
This bill, I think, it puts a stake in the ground that says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours.